At 17, I slept in a park after my family moved cross-country without me. Years later, I owned a shop they couldn't even afford to step into. When they returned, demanding their share, then tried sabotaging my business, I took them to court, and their entitlement finally met consequences. Hey Reddit, my parents dumped me at 17 and thought I'd just disappear. I didn't. I built my own life and moved on. But of course, they came crawling back and lit everything on fire. Before I explain that mess, here's where it all started. My name's Jared Holt. Most people call me Jay. I'm 29 now. I run a small but solid repair shop, and I'm the guy people call when their car sounds like it swallowed a fork or their generator is having a panic attack. I like engines, boxing, and quiet mornings where nobody needs anything from me. I'm not married, no kids, no family drama, or at least I thought that was true. My family was weird. Not weird in the charming sitcom way. More like, everyone's pretending this house isn't held together with duct tape and resentment. My dad, Tommy, acted like the universe created him to be served, entitled in that lazy, bitter way where he thought every good thing that happened in the world belonged to him. My mom, Marianne, was the queen of passive-aggressive disappointment, and my brother, Dylan, was the golden child, even though his biggest life achievement back then was beating level 4 in some zombie game. Me? I was the kid fixing things. The one patching holes in drywall, unclogging toilets, juggling school and work like a mini adult, while getting exactly 0 thanks for it. I saved up every scrap of money to buy my first car, and my dad borrowed the entire fund the day before I turned 16. When I asked about it, he acted like I was the selfish one for wanting what I earned. So yeah, that was the dynamic. They took, I gave, and nobody questioned it. Not even me. Not yet. But anyway, that's the backstory. Let's jump to the part where all the BS turned into something real. I was 17 when everything went sideways. I'd just finished a shift at this little grocery store. Boring job, but it paid for food and notebooks and the occasional energy drink. I biked home like usual, right as the sun was going down. It should have been just another night. Except when I rolled up to the house, it was dark. Not everyone's asleep dark. More like nobody lives here anymore. Dark. Blinds closed. No cars in the driveway. Silence. At first I thought, okay, maybe they went out. Maybe they forgot to leave a light on. That happens sometimes. But then I walked up the steps and saw the thing that still hits me like a weird deja vu. A cardboard box sitting right on the welcome mat. A half-crushed box with some of my clothes, my school binder, a couple tools, and a hoodie I'd been looking for since spring. On top of it was a piece of paper, taped like they were in a rush. It said, "You'll manage." Signed with their names like they were leaving a birthday card or something. I actually laughed when I read it. A short, confused, pissed-off laugh. Like, really? A note? That's the grand exit? I tried my key anyway because denial is strong, but of course it didn't work. They'd changed the lock. Didn't even leave me the old one out of respect. Just dump and run. I don't know how long I stood there on the porch. Minutes? Hours. Felt like time froze, and I was just staring at that stupid box thinking, you've got to be kidding me. Even when they abandoned me, they half-ass it. Right then the landlord rolled up in his truck. He looked annoyed, which honestly fit the vibe of the whole evening. He asked what I was doing there, and when I told him this was my house, he frowned and said, "Your parents moved out this morning. Terminated the lease. They told me you were just staying temporarily." And temporarily meant legally I had 0 right to be inside. 17. Technically still a kid. Standing outside the house I grew up in with a box of junk and nowhere to sleep. I didn't cry. Maybe some people would have, but I just felt tired. Tired in that quiet, heavy way where you don't even react big anymore. I picked up the box, balanced it on the handlebars of my bike, and rode away like someone finishing a shift, not someone whose entire life just got thrown in the trash. I could have called the cops. I could have called CPS. But I'd seen enough of grown-ups handling things to know I'd just end up in some system where nobody cared and everyone took credit. I didn't want to be managed. I wanted out. I didn't have anywhere to go, so I ended up at the park. Sat on a bench under one of those flickering lamps, sorting through what they left me. A sweatshirt, a couple shirts, some random school papers, a wrench set that wasn't even complete anymore. They didn't even give me the good tools. Those probably belonged to the house, according to Tommy. I laid back on the bench, stared up at the sky, and muttered, well, guess I'm managing. Everything after that night changed who I became. But that, right there on the park bench, was the exact moment I stopped being part of the Holt family and started becoming my own person. And trust me, they were going to regret creating that version of me. Sleeping in a park sounds dramatic when someone else says it, but when it's you, it just feels like a really uncomfortable nap you didn't consent to. The first night wasn't even the worst. It was the next morning. I got up, splashed water on my face from the drinking fountain, and headed straight to work like everything was normal. That was my whole strategy at 17. If you act unbothered long enough, eventually the universe believes you. The grocery store didn't care if I was homeless. They barely cared if I was alive as long as I showed up on time and didn't drop boxes on my foot again. I worked my shift, stocked shelves, helped old ladies find cereal, smiled like I wasn't living out of a cardboard box. The usual. When my shift ended, I aimed for the park again. I wasn't ready to beg anyone for a couch. Asking for help felt worse than sleeping outside. So I found a spot behind a row of bushes near a picnic table, shoved my box under it, and sat down with my 80-cent bag of chips like that counted as dinner. A couple days went like that. Wash up at the gas station, eat whatever was cheapest, sleep with one shoe off so I wouldn't snore and get robbed. I kept telling myself it was temporary, just until something else shows up. Spoiler, nothing shows up. You gotta go find it. On the third day, something did happen though. Not magically, just by pure annoyed luck. This guy came into the store asking if anyone wanted a temp job at a mechanic shop because one of their workers bailed. Everyone else ignored him. I said yes before he even finished talking. That's how I met Raphael. The dude was built like a retired boxer and talked like he'd seen every kind of idiot break every kind of engine. First thing he said to me was, "Can you hold a flashlight without shaking like a chihuahua?" I said, "Depends on the flashlight." He smirked and waved me over. For the first hour, I just handed him tools while he fixed a busted alternator. Raphael didn't talk much, but when he did, it was straight facts. None of that dad tone crap. Just normal conversation like I was a real person. Kinda refreshing. By the end of the day, he said, "Come back tomorrow. I'll throw you cash. And don't touch anything expensive." That was the closest thing to affection I'd gotten in years. I kept showing up every day, early, ready. Because a job meant money, and money meant not living like a raccoon. Somewhere in that first week, he started teaching me actual stuff. How to tell if a belt's about to snap. Why customers don't understand anything they're describing. Why WD-40 is basically holy water. Simple things, but stuff nobody ever bothered teaching me. In the break room, I met Trevor. He was 20-something, skinny, wore glasses that kept sliding down his face, but the guy was sharp. He saw me flipping through receipts one day and said, "Dude, you don't know how to budget, do you?" I said, "If buying the cheapest food counts, then yes." He laughed and pulled up this spreadsheet on his phone like he'd been waiting for someone to ask. He showed me how to track income, break expenses into categories, save in small chunks, all that adulting nonsense they never teach you in school. I nodded like I understood everything, and then went home. Well, to the park, to Google each term individually. By the end of the week, I had a plan. A real one. Not the wing it and hope plan I'd been living on. Step 1, don't die. Step 2, save enough for a room. Step 3, keep working. Step 4, don't ever turn into Tommy. Simple. Eventually, I worked up the nerve to ask Raphael if he knew anyone renting cheap rooms. He raised an eyebrow and asked, "You living in a shack or something?" I said, "Yeah, something like that." He didn't push. He just wrote down a phone number on a scrap of paper and said, "Call this lady. She rents out rooms to idiots like you. Cheap." And that was that. After 5 nights in the park, 3 gas station showers, and 1 squirrel trying to steal my chips, I finally got a place. A crappy room in a crappy house with a crappy mattress. But it had a door. And walls. And I didn't wake up staring at tree branches. That night, I sat on the floor with my box of belongings and realized something. When my family dumped me, I thought that was the end of my story. Turns out it was just the end of theirs in my story. Raphael, Trevor, and 100 busted engines were about to become the new chapter. And honestly, good. Because the kid they kicked out was about to turn into someone they were going to seriously regret underestimating. I didn't magically wake up one day with my life together. It was more like stumbling forward, tripping on every uneven surface and somehow not dying. But once I had that crappy rented room and a job that didn't make me want to shove my head into a toolbox, things started shifting. Raphael kept me on. Not officially, not with paperwork. More like, if you keep showing up and don't be stupid, I'll pay you. And that worked for me. I learned a lot from him in those first few months. Not because he was soft or friendly, but because he actually respected effort. If I messed up, he corrected me. If I did well, he nodded once and said, "Good." In Raphael language, that was a whole parade. Meanwhile, Trevor had decided he was going to drag me into the adult world, whether I wanted to or not. One day, he handed me a little notebook and said, "Track everything. You can't build anything if you don't know where your money evaporates." I said I didn't spend much. He said that wasn't the point. So I did it. Every dollar. Snacks, bus fares, cheap work gloves, everything. Turns out he was right. When you make your money look at you on paper, it gets real humble real fast. I started picking up side jobs too. Word got around that I was the kid who works hard and charges less than he should. People would hand me broken lawnmowers, weed whackers, old generators, and sometimes I'd actually bring them back to life. Other times I'd stare at the machine like it had personally insulted me. But either way, I kept learning. There was this one woman who dropped off a leaf blower and said, "My husband says it's dead. If you can fix it, it's yours." I nodded, took it apart that night, found a clogged carburetor, cleaned it, and the thing ran like a new one. I didn't even want the leaf blower, but it felt good proving somebody wrong just by existing. Over time, people stopped calling me that kid and started calling me Jay, the guy who can fix stuff. It felt like my hands were doing something that mattered, something that wasn't just survival. By the time I turned 18, I had enough saved that I bought a used set of tools. Actual decent ones. Heavy, sharp, solid. Tools that made me look like I knew what I was doing even when I didn't. Raphael saw me carrying them in and said, "Looks like someone's trying to join the big leagues." I just shrugged. But inside, yeah, I was proud. A couple months later, Raphael said something that stuck with me. "You learn fast, faster than most. Just don't get cocky." I laughed, because if he knew how little confidence I had back then, he'd realize being cocky wasn't even in the same zip code. But hearing him say that did something to my brain. Made me think maybe I wasn't screwed for life. Maybe I could actually do something bigger. So I started planning. Quietly, slowly. I'd sit in my room at night, staring at my notebook, writing down dumb ideas like fix engines for money and maybe get a shop. Back then it felt like writing become president, but it gave me something to chase. A year passed. My work got steadier. I fixed more stuff, learned more tricks, built up a tiny network of regulars. Some of them would say things like, "You should open a shop someday." I'd shrug and pretend I wasn't thinking about it daily. One morning, the owner of a small warehouse called me because one of their forklifts wouldn't start. I'd never fixed a forklift in my life, but I said yes. I showed up, poked around, figured out it was a dead starter. Took me 2 hours, but I fixed it. The guy paid me more than I'd made in 2 full days at the grocery store. That night, I wrote the words "Jay's Fix-It Mobile Service" in the front of my notebook. Messy letters, crooked lines, but it felt like something. Like a blueprint for a life that didn't exist yet but could. I didn't know it then. But that name was going to change everything. It was the first thing I ever created that belonged only to me. By the time I hit my mid-20s, life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I had Jay's Fix-It Mobile Service running steady. A tiny one-bay shop that smelled like engine oil and victory, and enough regular customers to keep the lights on. Not bad for a guy who used to shower in gas station sinks. The shop wasn't fancy. The walls were scuffed. The concrete floor had stains older than me, and my fan rattled like it was begging to retire. But it was mine. My tools, my space, my rules. I'd fix lawnmowers in the morning, alternators in the afternoon, and generators that sounded like dying animals whenever they rolled in. People trusted me. That alone separated me from half the shady operations in town. Then came the magazine article. Some local business magazine did a feature on young entrepreneurs who didn't crash and burn. And my landlord had recommended me, probably because I always paid rent early. They sent a photographer who made me pose holding a wrench like I was modeling for a charity calendar. The write-up was simple. Kid from nothing, built something. A feel-good story to fill space between ads for overpriced coffee and yoga studios. I didn't think anything of it, until my inbox betrayed me. The first message came from Marianne. Not mom, not anymore. Subject line, "Proud of you, Jared." The email was short, like she poured zero emotion into it, and hit send. She wrote, "We saw the article. You've grown into someone we always knew you could be. Maybe it's time we reconnect as a family. Love, Mom." Love. I had to read that twice just to make sure she didn't mean regards or sincerely disappointed. I stared at the message for a solid 5 seconds before deleting it. No anger, no shaking hands, just boredom. You don't get to walk out on someone and then come back the second they're useful. Life doesn't work on the Holt family discount plan. Naturally, Dylan tried next. He sent me a DM on social media. "Heard about the article. We should link up, man." Link up. Like we were old buddies who lost touch after high school, not siblings from a demolition derby of a childhood. I let the message sit unread. If respect isn't mutual, the conversation doesn't exist. Simple. But ignoring them didn't make them disappear. It made them get creative. A few days later, a guy showed up in my shop. Middle-aged, wearing sunglasses indoors like he was avoiding paparazzi in a rundown repair bay. He didn't ask about repairs, just stood there sniffing around the place like he was judging square footage. He finally said, "Heard you're doing real good?" He paused and his voice told me everything. I wiped my hands on a rag. "Cool. You buying something or sightseeing?" He looked uncomfortable. "Do you, still talk to your parents?" I stared at him. Tired already. "If you're gonna spy, at least pretend your car is broken." He left without buying anything. Shocker. After that, things escalated. Contractors I worked with started calling me saying, "Hey, didn't know you wanted to cancel those orders." And I had to tell them I definitely didn't. Someone was emailing contractors from a look-alike address. Same business name, one letter off, canceling orders like it was routine. By the time random cousins and relatives I barely remembered started messaging me things like, "Your parents miss you, you should call them," I already knew what was happening. They didn't care about reconnecting. They cared about leverage. They cared because I was finally worth something. Then the real proof walked right into my shop, literally. I was adjusting a carburetor when I heard loud footsteps in the front office. I walked out and found Marianne, pacing around like she was auditioning for a dramatic monologue. She didn't even see me at first. She was busy talking to no one, waving her hands, complaining loudly. When she finally turned and spotted me, her eyes went wide like she'd just seen a long-lost pet. "Jared, you're really here." "Yeah," I said. "Pretty sure I work here." She rushed forward like she wanted a hug. I stepped back. Not aggressively, just enough for her to get the memo without embarrassment. "We need to talk," she said. I leaned against the counter. "About what? How you left me on the porch with a box? Or how you've been sending random people to spy on me?" She froze. Then she said it. The classic Holt family line. "You're being dramatic." I laughed. "Right. That's me. Real drama queen." She started babbling about healing and family bonds and helping each other now that times are hard. Translation: they wanted money. I walked to the door, held it open, and said, "You can leave now." Her face fell. She stormed out, muttering something under her breath. But that stunt? That wasn't the peak. That was the warm-up. The real chaos? The kind that screws with your money, your reputation, and your sanity? That was still loading in the background. If you've ever wondered what happens when people who abandoned you suddenly feel entitled to your success, let me save you the suspense. They get bold. Not brave. Bold. It's a different flavor of stupidity. About a week after Marianne's little scene in my shop, I got the message that officially confirmed why they crawled back into my life. It was from Tommy, the man whose biggest skill back in the day was disappointing people. His email said, "Since you're doing well now, it's time you step up and help your family. We raised you. We expect support. Call me." Just straight up entitlement, typed confidently by a man who couldn't even raise a houseplant. I didn't reply. I wasn't giving him the satisfaction. But I did read it out loud to myself, and I swear, my brain was choosing between laughing or punching a wall. Instead, I just muttered, "You raised me? Where? In the parking lot?" The next day, he escalated. Text message this time. "Don't ignore me. You owe us. You have money because of how we raised you." I stared at it and shook my head. The only thing they taught me growing up was how not to be them. I finally sent a reply. Short, calm, precise. I don't fund people who abandoned me. 15 seconds later, he sent a wall of nonsense. Half guilt, half threats, all pathetic. I blocked his number. Not because I was scared. I just didn't want his stupidity lowering my IQ. Blocking him was the match. What happened next was the fire. The sabotage didn't start big. It started with something small enough that I almost brushed it off. A customer came back complaining their tire was flat right after leaving my shop. I checked it, slashed, clean, straight, not accidental. I patched it for free, but I knew instantly it wasn't random. People in my orbit don't do coincidence. Not the Holts. The next morning, 2 more slashings. Different cars, same cut pattern, same side of the shop. I pulled up the security footage. Camera facing that side, dead. Smashed in, like someone took a bat to it. But it caught the guy walking up and taking the swing. Then the feed cut out mid-impact. The other cameras still worked, but the angle on that side was gone, and I knew exactly who had vandalized something they didn't even understand. I told Raphael about it later when he swung by to borrow a tool. He raised an eyebrow and said, "Looks personal." "Yeah," I said. "The universe sent me a love letter." He grunted. "That's Raphael for, I'm pretty sure your dad is an idiot." A few days later, a customer came back complaining their generator broke after I fixed it. I checked it. Someone had poured sand into the tank. Not just a pinch, a handful. Sand in an engine is basically a death sentence. Only thing was, I'd rolled it outside under the awning after closing, lined up with the other pickups. I didn't think twice about it at the time. Now I did. That cost me hours of cleaning and a refund. And that pissed me off more than anything else so far. Because now it wasn't just my problem, it was hurting people who trusted me. The cherry on top came that night. I closed up shop, locked the bay door, walked around the back to throw trash, and found a note taped to the door. Big black marker letters, all caps. "You owe us. Not owe me. Owe us." The classic Holt family team effort. Too bad the team sucks. I didn't panic, didn't call anyone, didn't freak out. I just took a picture, pulled the note down, and tossed it in a Ziploc bag for evidence. Then I went back inside and kept working. Some people crumble when their past shows up to mess with them. Me? I just add it to the to-do list. A few days later, I drove home late from a job and found a familiar figure standing in the lobby of my apartment building. Marianne. She was arguing with the poor front desk guy, waving her arms like she was auditioning for some dramatic TV role. The second she spotted me, she went from angry to helpless, faster than a broken fan belt. "Jared," she cried, "why won't you talk to us?" I pointed toward the street. "Because you're standing in my lobby screaming like a public service announcement." She tried to rush toward me. I stepped back. The lobby guard stepped forward. Beautiful teamwork. "You owe your family support," she yelled. "Your father is struggling." There it was. The truth finally said out loud. "Not my problem," I said, calm as concrete. People were staring now, phones out, recording. She didn't care. She fell to her knees like she was collapsing under emotional gravity. "You're heartless," she shrieked, "after everything we did for you." I walked past her, hit the elevator button, and said over my shoulder, "You didn't do anything for me. You did things to me. Big difference." Then I stepped into the elevator and let the doors close on her screaming. Of course, that video made the rounds. And of course, the big contract I'd been negotiating for a fleet repair job backed out the next morning. They said they were concerned about stability. Losing that contract hurt. It was the biggest deal I had lined up, but I didn't break. Didn't spiral. I took all that anger straight to the gym, taped up my hands, and beat the heavy bag until my knuckles felt like they were glowing. Coach Bruno watched me for a while and finally said, "Whatever you're hitting isn't here, man." I just kept punching. "It'll live," he smirked. "Keep going. You're not done yet." Sabotage is one thing. Annoying, expensive, childish, but still something you can shake your head at and move on. What my parents did next wasn't sabotage anymore. It was obsession wearing a cheap disguise. After Marianne's meltdown in my lobby and the lost contract, I figured they'd either cool off or get bored. Normal people eventually run out of energy. But I forgot. They weren't normal. They were Holts. Rage-fueled, ego-driven, entitlement-powered Holts. About a week later, I opened the shop early, like usual, and the first thing I saw was a new pile of fake reviews on my business page. Not subtle ones. Dramatic, opera-level accusations. He threatened me when I asked for a refund. I saw him yell at a customer in the parking lot. He overcharges and steals from family. That last line gave it away. Subtlety was never their thing. I sat back in my chair, rubbed my face, and muttered, "You people don't even try to be creative." I took screenshots of everything. Dates, usernames, timestamps. Evidence folder was starting to look like a thesis project. Then it escalated. A supplier called saying I chewed them out in an email. Only issue? I didn't write the email. I hadn't even been awake during the timestamp. Someone, obviously Tommy, made a burner account with my name and sent a rant that sounded like a toddler arguing on a playground. I cleared it up with the supplier, but I could hear the doubt in his voice. Just try to keep things professional, Jay. Professional? Brother, I was the only professional in this entire mess. Later that same week, a man walked straight into my employee-only area like he owned the place. He didn't knock, didn't ask, just wandered in holding his phone like he was recording proof of alien life. "Hey," I said sharply. "This area is restricted." He looked at me with this smug expression. "Your father said you'd try to hide. I'm here to talk some sense into you." My patience hit zero in under 1 second. I stepped forward, blocking his view of everything behind me. "You've got two choices. Leave on your own or leave with assistance." He blinked. Are you threatening me? No, I said calmly. Threats would involve effort. I'm offering you a fact. He left. Quickly. I'm not that tall, but I guess confidence makes you look taller. I locked the door behind him and wrote everything down. Name, description, time. My evidence file was turning into a small novel. The moment I knew things were officially out of hand was 2 nights later. I came to the shop after hours because I'd forgotten a torquey wrench. Right when I reached the back entrance, I stepped into something slick. Almost slipped. Oil. A whole line of it smeared across the ground in front of the door, like someone wanted me to eat pavement. I crouched down, sniffed it, checked the thickness. Yeah, definitely intentional. Nobody spills 30 feet of oil accidentally. Next to the puddle was another note, written in the same blocky handwriting as the first one. Family doesn't turn their back. I'd laugh if I weren't so tired. I picked it up, slid it into a bag without touching the surface, and whispered, "You idiots really want to get arrested, don't you?" Enough was enough. The next morning, I walked into the police station with a backpack full of evidence. Photos, screenshots, broken camera, slashed tires, printed emails, reviews, notes, oil puddle pictures. Everything neatly arranged because Trevor had taught me the beauty of documentation. The officer at the desk raised his eyebrows. This all from the same people? Unfortunately, I said, and they happened to share my last name. He flipped through the pile for a good 2 minutes before saying, "Yeah, this is not a family dispute anymore. This is harassment, vandalism, impersonation, and maybe stalking. Glad we're on the same page," I said. They filed an official report, asked for statements, took copies of everything. And the moment I left the station, I finally felt something close to relief. Not because it was over, but because I wasn't going to let them keep swinging without consequences. Later that day, my lawyer, just a practical guy named Carson who hates nonsense, reviewed everything and said, "We're going to court, and we're getting a restraining order." I nodded. "Good." He looked up at me. "You're remarkably calm about this." "Yeah," I said. "I've been dealing with them my whole life. This is the quiet version." He laughed, shook his head, and started drafting paperwork. The following week, Tommy and Marianne officially got served. Restraining order hearing, summons for harassment and vandalism. No dramatic music, just consequences finally catching up. Tommy texted me from a new number. "You're overreacting. You owe us. We're family." I replied with exactly 3 words. "See you in court." Because at that point, I was done absorbing hits. Done letting them operate in the shadows. Done playing defense. They wanted chaos? Fine. But I was done being the kid on the porch with a cardboard box. Now I was the guy with evidence, a lawyer, and a whole lot of patience for justice. Court day arrived like a bad weather report. One you knew was coming but hoped would forget about you. Mine didn't. I showed up in clean work boots, jeans that didn't have grease stains for once, and a black tee. Carson, my lawyer, gave me the "could you have tried harder" look, but I wasn't there to model. I was there to win. Tommy and Marianne were already waiting inside the courthouse lobby. If looks could talk, his would say, "This is all your fault." And hers would say, "I'm the victim here. Somebody film me sobbing for Facebook." They tried to approach me. Tommy puffed out his chest like he was about to demand tribute. Marianne had tears loaded, ready to deploy. I didn't break stride, just walked past them like they were malfunctioning appliances. Carson whispered, "Nice." I said, "I'm not here for improv theater." The hearing started with the judge reading the list of accusations. It took a solid minute and a half, and that wasn't even the detailed version. When she finally looked up, she fixed Tommy with the same look I give customers who say, "My engine stopped working, but I ignored the warning lights." Tommy tried to jump in first, of course. "Your Honor, he's exaggerating. We never—" The judge held up her hand. "Sir, you'll speak when I ask you to." He shut up with the speed of someone who finally met a force stronger than his ego. Carson started presenting evidence. Calm, methodical. Every photo, video, screenshot, printed email, lined up like I was presenting a science fair project titled, "My Parents Are Unhinged." Then came the footage. Tommy lurking in the parking lot. A grainy clip of someone smashing my security camera. A figure pouring sand into a gas tank. Even a blurry shot of Marianne pacing in my apartment lobby and screaming like she'd been auditioning for a dramatic movie about family betrayal. While watching it, the judge whispered, "Good grief." Tommy tried to object. "He's twisting this. He owes us. We raised him." The judge turned her head slowly. "You abandoned a minor, according to the documents." He froze like someone unplugged his brain. Marianne jumped in then, playing her usual role. "We made a mistake." We thought he'd be fine. He was always so independent. I said, independent because I had to be. There's a difference. The judge noted. Then came the best part. Carson slid the printed notes across the table. The ones that said, "You owe us," and "Family doesn't turn their back." The judge stared at them like she was trying to decide whether to laugh or call security. She asked, "Did you write these?" Tommy immediately said no. Marianne said, "Absolutely not." Dylan, who had slunk into the back row at some point, covered his face with his hands. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Interesting how the handwriting matches your filing signatures." Chaos, instant chaos. They both started talking at once, excuses, lies, explanations that contradicted themselves. The judge tapped her gavel twice, hard. "That's enough," she said. She turned to me. "Mr. Holt, do you feel unsafe around your parents?" I didn't hesitate. "I feel inconvenienced, but I also feel done letting them run around like raccoons in my garbage." Carson pinched the bridge of his nose, but the judge actually smirked. Honesty is appreciated. Then she delivered the ruling. A 3-year restraining order. Full no contact. No approaching my shop, my apartment, or any job site. No exceptions. As for the money, she kicked that to the next phase. Damages would be handled separately, with the receipts and estimates. And the vandalism wasn't family court drama anymore. That part was already in the system as a criminal investigation off the police report. Tommy exploded. "This is ridiculous. He's lying. We're his parents." The judge slammed the gavel. "One more outburst and I'll add contempt of court." He sat so fast the air moved. Marianne started crying. Not gentle tears, ugly, dramatic. "Why aren't cameras filming me?" Tears. Dylan finally stood up. "Mom, Dad, stop. You're making it worse." They glared at him like he was a traitor. "Welcome to the club, buddy." Court adjourned. I stood, stretched, and walked out. No dramatic one-liner, no victory lap. Just calm steps out of the courtroom, like I'd finished filing taxes. Outside the courthouse, Dylan jogged after me. "Jay, wait, please." I turned. "Make it quick." He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry. For everything. I didn't know how bad it was until now." I said, "Fix yourself first. The rest isn't my job." He nodded slowly. For once, no excuses. I headed back to my shop afterward. New day, same tools. I figured things would cool down for a while. I was wrong. That night, as I was locking up, a rock slammed into the glass door, hard enough to crack it. I looked up to see a car peeling out of the lot. I couldn't see their faces, but I didn't need to. I took a photo, grabbed the security footage from the angles I still had, and called it in as a restraining order violation before I even swept up the glass. The Holts weren't done being Holts, but now I had a court order, a lawyer, evidence, and patience for war. They wanted chaotic? Fine. I could outlast them. I'd survived being abandoned at 17. I could survive this too. And this time, I wasn't the kid on the porch with a cardboard box. I was the man with a business, a backbone, and zero fear. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.